everybody. It's your pal JR, and welcome to Assume I'm an Idiot, the show where we take complicated topics and run them through the ignoramus grist mill until we have finely ground, easy-to-chew facts. I am the idiot.
I'm a genius. Oh, wait, I'm an idiot.
And on this podcast, we explore everything from silly fun facts that everyone should know to big, scary adult nonsense like money, science, nature, infrastructure, and so much more. Broken down without corporate talk or industry speak, so even a barely sentient lummox like me can follow along. So sit back, get comfy, and let's peel off the nonsense to expose the raw, unscabbed truth on how the world works. Today's topic is something that controls your life quietly, judges you silently, and has absolutely ruined at least one good mood for every adult listening. But first, it's time for Random Stuff You Should Know.
Random Stuff You Should Know.
From the world of nature. Octopuses have 3 hearts. And yes, it's octopuses or octopi, both are correct. But they have 3 hearts. 2 pump blood to the gills, 1 pumps blood to the rest of the body. And when an octopus swims, the main heart actually stops beating. There's no definitive answer as to the evolutionary purpose for this. Just know if you date an octopus, you'll get triple the love. Aww. Also from the world of nature. Bananas are berries. Strawberries are not. Botanically speaking, bananas qualify as berries. Strawberries don't. A berry is defined as a fleshy fruit from a single flower and a single flower ovary, containing seeds embedded in the pulp, with a soft outer skin, that's called the exocarp, fleshy middle, that's the mesocarp, and an inner layer, that's the endocarp. Strawberries aren't true botanical berries because they develop from a single flower with multiple ovaries, and the fleshy red part we eat is the swollen flower receptacle, not the ovary wall. Botanically, they're considered aggregate accessory fruits, where each tiny seed on the surface is actually a fruit from one of those ovaries, and the main red part is considered extra tissue. And when it's described like that, it makes me reconsider ever eating a strawberry again in my life. The end-all be-all is nature makes no sense and once again refuses to explain itself. Okay, on to the main topic. Today we're discussing something you've heard about forever and probably have been lectured about by parents, landlords, banks, and a car dealership guy who smells like he bathed in Dracar Noir, which is French for regret. I'm talking about credit scores, that ever-present throbbing financial pain that everyone pretends to understand, but no one ever explains properly. And when they do explain it, it somehow sounds like, just pay on time. Don't use too much credit, but also use some credit, but not all of it. But don't close accounts, but don't open too many either, and also good luck. So today, because I have the financial comprehension of a damp loaf of bread, we're going to break down a bunch of different things and try to sort this out as well as my soft cerebellum can. Let's dissect the basics. What a credit score actually is, how it's calculated, why it feels backwards and stupid, and how to play the game without losing your mind. So first off, what a credit score actually is, and I'm going to start with what it's not. A credit score is not a measure of how smart you are, a measure of how rich you are, a measure of how responsible you are as a human being. None of that matters. To put it in the most basic terms, a credit score is a risk score. That's it. It answers exactly one question. If we lend money to this moron, how likely are we to get it back? That's the whole deal. It was created by lenders for lenders to protect lenders. You are not a customer. You are a product. And in essence, you're rated on how good a product you are. So, who invented this nightmare and why did they invent it? First off, credit scores mostly come from 2 places. FICO, probably one you've heard of, and Vantage Score, which is a newer, slightly different credit scoring process. Credit scores were invented in the 1950s by Fair Isaac Corporation, that's FICO, to standardize lending by creating objective mathematical ways to assess credit risk. The first general model became standard in about 1989, making lending fairer and more accessible, though there were early attempts to standardize credit reporting as early as the 1840s, but it didn't go so well. So in 1956, Bill Fair and Earl Isaac founded Fair Isaac and Company and began developing a scoring model specifically for businesses. In 1958, the first credit scoring system was sold to a lender. In 1989, after 30 years of using it for business, FICO worked with credit bureaus to create the first industry-standard general-purpose credit score, making it widely available for consumers. So why were credit scores invented? For the most part, it was to reduce bias. Before credit scores, lenders relied on personal impressions, leading to discrimination based on race, gender, social class, etc., which unified credit scores aimed to eliminate. So essentially, they were replacing biased, subjective loan officer judgments with something more mathematical. It was also invented to improve efficiency. Prior to scores, lending was a lengthy process. Using a mathematical model made lending decisions faster and more efficient. With the growth of consumer credit, lenders needed a reliable way to assess borrowers quickly and fairly. Fast forward to 2006 and a new system is born. VantageScore was invented by the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, again, names you've probably heard before, to provide a more consistent scoring model across all agencies based on how credit use had evolved. It started considering factors like payment history, credit mix, utilization, how much you were using credit, and other factors to assess creditworthiness for loans, credit cards, and more. It even started incorporating alternative data for broader reach. And alternative data is sort of in quotation marks here because no one really knows what it is. So in short, more people were using more types of credit. So, for better or worse, and I choose worse, a slightly more modernized method was invented. It's more complicated, dives deeper into your life, and it's generally more punitive than the original FICO system. Both are still used. Banks can choose which one they feel like using because, of course, they can. And worse yet, the exact formulas are secret because nothing says trustworthy system like hidden math that controls your rent and car payment. So, how are the scores calculated? This is the part that makes everybody mad, and for good reason. It's based on a bunch of different factors, each with a slightly different weight assigned to them. For example, payment history. Payment history is 35% of the points, for lack of a better way of describing it. Did you pay on time? Missed payments are bad. Why this sucks is that there's no bonus for being perfect. You don't get extra points for paying early. You only get punished for messing up. In general, the system does not reward excellence. It only punishes failure. And we'll get to why that's ridiculous later. Another factor is credit utilization. That's about 30% of the points. How much of your available credit are you using? Using a lot? Bad. Using none? Also suspicious. And why this sucks is you're rewarded for having access to money you don't use. People with more money get better scores by default. People living closer to the edge get punished. Cool system. Factor number 3 is length of credit history. That's about 15% of the points. Older accounts equals a better score. So why this sucks is young people are screwed automatically because they have no credit history. And also closing old accounts hurts you even more if you don't need them. Your past self controls your future self forever as far as credit scores are concerned. So unless you can go back in time to make different decisions, or you're born with unbelievable financial foresight, you're essentially haunted by your actions forever. Factor number 4 is your credit mix. That's about 10% of the points. Do you have different kinds of debt? Credit cards, loans, mortgage? You're actually rewarded for having more kinds of debt. That's like saying, wow, look at all those crazy razor-sharp knives you're juggling. Very impressive. Here, add a few more. Factor number 5 is new credit inquiries. That's about 10% of the points. If you apply for credit, your score dips. And that sucks because shopping for loans actually hurts you. People who need credit the most get punished for asking for it. So, why do credit scores feel so dumb? Well, because they are. They don't care how much you earn, don't care if your rent is 70% of your income, don't care if medical bills wrecked you, if a pandemic froze you financially, don't care if life exploded unexpectedly, and they don't care about your good financial decisions. All they care about is your fiscal mistakes, and they remember those mistakes for 7 to 10 years. So with all that said, who benefits from this system? The short answer is not you. The long answer is banks, credit card companies, credit bureaus, data brokers. You generate the data by your habits. They sell it. You pay to monitor it, and you're responsible for fixing it if it's wrong, which it often is. It's kind of a lose-lose system for all us schmoes. So you might be asking, is there a way to play this game without losing your mind or your soul? Yes, here's the good news. You do not need a perfect score. Okay, a perfect score doesn't help you at all, which is great because a perfect score is nearly impossible to get. You need a good enough score. That's it. You need a good enough score. So in the good to good plus range. The problem is every business, every lender, every bank has a different idea of what a good credit score is. Some are very specific. Some have a very broad range. Credit scores typically range from 300 to 850, and they're broken down into categories: bad or poor, fair, good, and excellent, or very good. The exact definition of bad or good or excellent depends on the specific scoring model, FICO or Vantage score, whatever one the lender is using. And if you feel like there should be circus music playing under this, you're not alone, because this is all maddening. The ranges are generally similar, but they're not exactly the same. So let's clear that up really quickly, what the ranges are. The most widely used model, the FICO score, is used in about 90% of U.S. lending decisions. So that's the main credit score calculator. FICO credit scores range from bad or poor. That's a credit score that ranges between 300 and roughly 580. Borrowers in this range are considered high risk. They often face big difficulty getting approved for new credit, and if they are approved, they will most likely face really high interest rates and bad terms. Okay? The fair category under FICO is 580 to roughly 670. Those people are considered subprime by some lenders. The approval is possible for credit, but interest rates will be way higher than people that have good credit, which brings us to good credit. The good category is roughly 670 to 740. Lenders generally view this as an acceptable or low-risk range. Borrowers can typically qualify for most credit products at, let's say, reasonable interest rates. And then you jump up to the excellent or very good. That's about 740 to 850. Scores in this range demonstrate a history of positive credit behavior and make borrowers eligible for the best interest rates and the best terms and premium credit cards, etc. So that's the FICO scores. Vantage score credit ratings are a little bit different. The Vantage score model has different boundaries. Poor or very poor is 300 to 600. Fair is 601 to 660. Good is 661 to 780. Excellent is 780 to 850. But the key takeaway here is, while the specific thresholds can vary, a score of 670 or higher by FICO or 661 or higher by Vantage score is generally considered the starting point for good credit, opening the door to more favorable financial products, better terms, etc. Scores above 800 are consistently considered exceptional and they get all the benefits. Those numbers are essentially the only way lenders decide if A, you're going to get money, and B, what your interest rate will be. We've all seen car ads, for example, that promote crazy low payment offers or 0% interest with a tiny little disclaimer that reads, or even says in the voiceover, for highly qualified customers. A highly qualified customer is someone with a very good to excellent credit rating, roughly 750 to 850. So the ad might say you can lease a car for $250 a month. That price is for customers that have a very good to excellent credit rating. Once you go down below very good, to say the mid 600 range, that monthly price goes up quickly because you no longer qualify for the best interest rate. And the next thing you know, you have a car payment of $350 instead of $250 with a 6% interest. Advertised deal be damned. That system applies to everything from credit card rates to mortgages and more. And remember, I mentioned the point system, or how the score is calculated, is super secret. The formula is more secret than Coca-Cola or WD-40. As far as my research has found, the percentages of your actions are defined, right? That's the factors that I mentioned up before, 35%, 15% of this, 10% of this. But what those percentages equate to in points is a complete mystery and also complete bullshit. Okay, I'm going to jump out of the research booth and step into the editorial booth for a few minutes, so buckle your seatbelts because it's slightly off the path here. And I'll set it up by saying, 1, do with this what you will, and 2, I'm not a full-blown conspiracy nut, but let's just say I have conspiracy theory leanings. There's an ongoing scam out there that has the possibility to hurt all of us regarding credit card interest rates. I'm not talking about some fake Nigerian prince or a bunch of douchebags sitting in a phone center somewhere in a foreign country. I'm talking about a scam being perpetrated by well-established, well-known major banks right here. I'll back up. There are two types of loan interest rates, fixed and variable. Both are dependent on what's going on with the Fed. The Fed, referring to the federal interest rate that's decided based on what's going on in the economy. You've probably all heard or read the news headlines, Fed drops interest rate by 0.5%, or the Fed is considering raising interest rates to XYZ. That just means that a committee of 12 people, that's members of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve Chairman, who is currently Jerome Powell, presidents of the Federal Reserve Bank, and a few others, raise or lower the federal interest rate to maximize employment and to manage inflation. Okay? So the reason both fixed and variable interest rates are tied to this is that your interest rate is guided in a lot of ways by that number. I don't want to get into the complicated math, so here's the Cliff's Notes version. Fixed rates are set at the time of the loan and based on your credit worthiness. Variable rates fluctuate based on what's going on in the financial market. In general, fixed rates are better because they provide predictable payment over the life of a loan, while variable rates, though they might have a very attractive initial low percentage rate, can fly all over the map. That's a really huge deal when you're paying for a house or a car. Think about a mortgage that goes from 6% to 15%. That's a massive jump in your mortgage payment. So when you can, go with a fixed rate. You'll hear a variable rate sometimes called prime plus a number. Prime is directly based on the Fed rate, technically something called the federal funds rate. But the idiot version is a variable rate loan is a percentage plus whatever the prime is. So if the prime goes up, so does your rate. You dig? That's a very math-free version. There's a lot more to it, but that's the basics. Anyway, just a little info that's important to know. But it's about loans. The scam I mentioned is related to credit cards and how banks can slip an insidious form of variable interest rates into your credit card contract. Now, the reason I said this is not some aluminum foil hat conspiracy theory is because it has happened to many friends of mine and has happened to me twice. Here's how it works. You apply for a credit card that has a fixed rate of, let's keep it round numbers, let's say 10%. You're approved for 10%, you sign all the stuff, and you get your card shortly after. In the fine print of the credit card contract, there's a bunch of lawyery speak and complicated terms. More on that in a second. That state if you miss a payment at any time, your interest rate will go up. Not a little, a staggering amount. We're talking about going from 10% to 26 or 29%. Let that sink in. So we'll take my experience as an example. I got a credit card from my bank, separate from my debit card. I'm a person who reads fine print. Not everyone does. And I read that there's a possibility that my rate will be jacked to the bejesus if I missed a payment. So I set my auto pay to ensure that I never would. I even set it to deliver a few days early just to be safe. Essentially, this is a payment from my checking account to the credit card account, both from the same bank. I get my first credit card statement, which informs me that my rate is now 26%. But I haven't missed a payment. Au contraire, says the bank, they claim my payment, quote unquote, didn't go through, and therefore it's registered as a missed payment. So double checking my statement, sure as hell, the payment didn't go through. My argument, of course, is that it was a payment from the same bank. So how could it not go through? Fight as I might and try as I might to get an answer, the result was the same. Now I have a 26% interest rate, which if I had spent a couple $100s on that card, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But I got the card to make some large purchases for my business. So we're talking over $10,000 in charges. Now at this astronomical rate. So I did what any thinking human would do. I paid off the card, then quickly closed it. Fast forward 2 years or so. By now I have switched banks. Again, I get a credit card from the bank. Again, it has an interest rate penalty worked into the fine print. And as a responsible human, I set up auto payments to make sure I didn't miss any. Can you guess what happened? I'll save you the time. The payment magically didn't go through. Again. And my interest rate rocketed up to 26%. Again. Now, if it had happened once, I could chalk it up to some technical snafu or a blip, whatever. But twice? At two different banks? No way. Before you ask, yes, I may be a buffoon, but I know how to set up an auto payment. This is not some strange coincidence. This, friends, is a scam, plain and simple. And as I said, this has happened to friends, to family. We're all missing credit card payments? Come on. Reiterating that this is not conspiracy theory, understand that the goal of a bank is to keep you paying for as long as possible. That's it. They want you to charge up more things. They give you incentives like cash back and so on. They offer credit card balance transfers into a special intro rate, which will go way up after the promotional period is over. And if you get close to paying off your card, most will offer to increase your credit limit. They want you to spend and spend and spend so that you can keep paying the interest for as long as humanly possible. Forever is just fine with them. What happens is when your rate jumps up to that redonkulous number, you can never catch up. Let's say you have $10,000 in charges. Your payment might be $400 a month, but the interest you get stung with is $500 a month. So unless you can afford to pay huge chunks, you'll never touch the actual $10,000 principal that you owe. I said at the top of this diatribe that the fine print has a lot of lawyery speak and industry terms and complicated numbers. That's not by accident, okay? These contract terms are specifically written so that the bulk of people don't understand them. Much like insurance policies, they do the same thing. They make it all complicated in legalese so that you don't know what's actually covered until it's far too late. Both are guilty of this. Officially, there's something called the Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act of 2009. It's usually just called the Credit Card Act. It's the primary federal law enhancing transparency in consumer credit cards. It amends something called the Truth in Lending Act that used to exist to restrict unfair rate hikes, mandate clear fee disclosures, require a 45-day notice for any changes, and limit penalty fees. Well, guess what? Those clever banking folks still found a way around it. That way is usually putting so much copy in the fine print, normally an entire back of the contract, in 5-point microtype that few people, if any, will read it. But you need to read it, and you need to push back, because banks are making billions of dollars with this scam. Believe me or don't, but it's out there and it's drawing a target on all of us. As I said, do with this what you will. Anyway, sorry for the tangent. Back to our regularly scheduled program. So what are ways to improve your credit? Now, most people know you can usually check your credit score for free through your bank, through your credit card issuer, or one of the major credit bureaus such as Experian. Many offer free credit monitoring tools. But let's say you want to improve your credit rating. It's very difficult to pick just one thing to work on because you kind of have to work on everything at once. Your payment history, your credit utilization, your credit mix, etc., in order to see any real movement, which is impossible. Because, for example, your payment history is exactly that. History. You can't change history. You can work to improve your habits, but you can't erase what you've already done, which makes the whole thing feel arbitrary and completely bananas. So are there ways to improve your credit score? Yes, but it takes a while. Stuff like paying on time, paying down big balances, not closing all of your credit cards, and so on will make a difference, just not immediately. In the end, though, the effort is worth it. If history has taught me nothing else, there's a strong likelihood that my breakdown of this has made it more confusing than it already is. Don't take the word of a dim-witted baboon like me. Do some of your own research. Get intimately familiar with your credit rating and your interest rates. Don't rely on someone's word or confusing terms and conditions to dictate your financial life. Don't be afraid to ask questions and push back. And don't stand for any baloney when you see something that looks a little squirrely.
He doesn't stand for baloney.
So let's wrap this up. Your credit score is not a moral judgment. Okay? Let's just get that out there. They're not judging you as a person. It's not a personality test. It's not a measure of your worth. Well, at least of who you are as a person. It's a flawed, clunky, outdated system designed to protect lenders, not people. And you're allowed to hate it. I do. But it ain't ever going away. So you just need to understand it well enough that it stops screwing with your life. That does it for this time. Appreciate you listening. I hope this was helpful, or at the very least, not harmful. Chomping at the bit to correct all the stuff I got wrong? Can't wait to tell me what a dunderhead I am? Have a cool topic or just want to get something off your chest? Well, good news. You can email us at hello@ruffandtumble.com. That's hello@ruff-n-tumble.com. I'd love to hear from you. Join me for another upcoming episode of Assume I'm an Idiot. Till then, this is your pal JR. Catch you again soon.